Greetings, gamers, and welcome to the 8th live stream from the MisfitGamersStudios. I'm your host, Vortex, and this is D&D Discussions. Today's going to be a little bit different. If you already noticed, we're going to do a little bit of a new approach here. And by we, I mean I have a special guest here again today. I have Kage in the studio, so we're going to get him on board, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going to be happening to D&D Discussions and where we want to kind of take it from here. So let me go ahead and bring this up. Hello and welcome.
What's
Welcome
happening?
Back. This is your third time in the studio?
I think so. I think so. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. So, yes, we are now going to be on Twitch. That is going to be the biggest change that we're trying to do right now, or at least that I'm trying to take the whole studio in a new direction. So, for those who either just coming in or who have not seen the previous videos, started out for the last 2 months, been doing live streams on YouTube, and the whole purpose of that was to generate content. Essentially, the idea was that in a live stream fashion, felt more free to do just my own content, didn't have to think too much about a script or the editing process. It was allowing me to feel more free about it, and then I can go back later using all of that content I've generated and then actually edit it down, clip it, and make better content from that. But I found that I was having some difficulty keeping up with, it's difficult keeping up with a weekly schedule, especially just being brand new. The topics are a little bit more hard. And I felt the desire to want more of an audience interaction. I always did want that eventually, and I just felt that going slow on YouTube would have been great, but I'm starting to realize that if I really want that interaction and I want a little bit more discoverability, being here on Twitch is going to allow for that a lot more. I think being in the realm of just chatting is going to allow for people who want to look for people who are talking about D&D, whereas on YouTube, the best I'm going to get is after I started generating videos, people would then realize they're coming from a live stream and then find my live stream. And that's fine too. But here, at least, there's more of a likelihood that in the middle of a conversation, someone's going to pop in, and that will help gear that conversation further, and then we can get into, more things that people want to hear.
I'm about that life.
Yeah, so that's mainly why we want to do this. I also just wanted to see if multi-streaming was correct. I say some of the weirdest shit sometimes.
Listen, I get where your brain's going. It makes sense.
I wanted to see if multi-streaming was doable in the fashion that I wanted to, and it seems to be working right now. So at the same time, if you're watching this in the future, this video will be available on YouTube, just as all my other live streams are. So if you're new to this, my YouTube channel has all of the older live streams, and I'm using YouTube mainly to do the recording for me. But I figured why limit it to just, streaming on Twitch when I was already streaming on YouTube. So I am simultaneously live streaming right now on Twitch and YouTube, depending on where you're watching me from. But as far as I know, I haven't been able to test. Actually, I should be able to test real quick if my YouTube chat comes through. So I'm going to do a little bit of a test here, chat, and we are going to see, did that come through? I am not seeing it, so no. So yeah, so if you're watching me on YouTube, and you want to interact with us, come on over to Twitch to interact. Otherwise, leave us a comment on the channel on YouTube, and we'll get to you maybe in another episode. All right. So I've been talking with Kage here a little bit about what coming over to Twitch is going to mean for the stream. Obviously, Twitch is known for being much more audience interactive, and that's kind of what we want. Obviously, I do want to just talk about D&D and talk about subjects and get people to think beyond the book. That's the whole purpose of the stream, is thinking beyond the book.
Beyond the book.
But,
I love that saying.
Me too. I'm glad. Thanks for pointing that out, man. I just such a good way, just a good motto for this. But I wanted to think about what audience interaction also meant, because it's more than just getting ideas from the audience. I mean, I can get a Twitter account, I can go to Reddit, there's plenty of things that I can do to get audience feedback and audience ideas, but to really have interaction on a consistent basis, right? I mean, I'm not streaming a game here. And it's a little bit more than a podcast. If this was just a podcast, we would just be releasing audio, but I want to bridge that gap somewhere in between. So, been talking with Kage here, and we have some really interesting ideas. If we start to get enough followers and people really dig what we do and want to experience it, right? Because unless we sit here, I was actually talking with him about this before. Unless I sit here and run a game for all my buddies, and you guys watch it live, or until I get the Old Gods campaign uploaded and going, I mean, what authority do I have really to talk on all of this stuff outside of whether or not you agree with my ideas? But at the end of the day, I could tell you all what it's like about gaming with us and what that is, but until you actually do it, how are you really going to know, right? Unless you see it or unless you experience it. So we started thinking about that. We started thinking about what can we do to give people a slice of life in gaming with us without actually running full-on games, because that would be fun, but it's also just difficult with scheduling. And especially when you're dealing with people online, schedules just get weird.
For sure.
So we have a couple different ideas, but I want to start with one that Kage had brought up because it just spawned. We were almost on the same page with a very similar idea, but it just kind of spawned morphed,
which is, I feel like, exactly what it's supposed to do.
So he had this really cool idea for essentially like a it was basically like a draft. So explain this concept that you saw and explain. So like,
the initial like mentality is like I was thinking about creating like a little weekly game where people would come together, they would create a level 10 character in D&D 5th edition, you get like a magical weapon or something like that, and you would come together in an arena and just do a free-for-all PvP battle and see who comes out on top. And whoever wins that PvP battle, they get to keep their character and level it up, and then everybody else comes back with a new character the next week. And it's just kind of like King of the Hill type gladiator style Tower of Terror deal. But we were thinking about how we can take that and change that and morph that into something that would work well, kind of better in our setting. So,
right. And so I loved this idea of the draft. So I took that as how can we, instead of just, taking it as okay, we're just going to do a draft and what do we, compare, right? Like, I think your example was cantrips, right?
Oh, yes, cantrips.
So they had a draft where there was like a list of cantrips, and you had to
everyone would go through and they would pick one, and they would be like, hey, I want prestidigitation, and the next person would be like, all right, well, I'm taking booming blade. All right, well, I wanted booming blade. Well, no, I took it, so now you're gonna have to pick something else for your second.
And so he brings this idea up, and I think that's a great idea, but of course my mind, as my DM self, immediately goes, okay, well, how is this practical? We could sit here and talk all day long, and then we can basically play what's that card game, the superhero card game, Super Fight. We could basically sit here and super fight it, right?
I was legit thinking about that. That would kind of be a cool side segment too,
right? So you could do that. You could do a draft. You could say, hey, here's weapons, here's skills, here's feats, opportunities, here's spells. Yeah, you could say, here's a list of things that you guys got to pick from, draft use a draft kind of concept, and then you could play a super fight level of argument of describe to me like why you're set. But that's where I loved the idea, but that's where it fell apart immediately for me. Again, the way my brain works, I was like, okay, that's cool that there could be a draft of like cantrips, but then I'm like, well, how do you judge if that's good or though, right? Like, right. Do they have points values? But then I was like, so my mind goes straight into, well, how would you test that? And then I was like, wait a second. So what if we get if we get enough followers and we get you guys interested, we could do a draft of something similar where we have like a challenge and we say, hey, you guys are going to build your characters based off this draft, whether they're feats, spells, whatever. And we could actually have it as a combination of things. We could have a combination of spells, feats, and weapons. And the entire list is up for the draft. So you have to prioritize. If you're the mage, you're going to want to prioritize grabbing as many of the spells as first. But if you're going to be a fighter, you're going to prioritize the weapons, right? So we give, so anyway, we have a very set limit of things for the draft. You guys would build characters based off said draft. And then we would run out those scenarios maybe in like a Discord using like AvreBot for 5th edition to be able to actually run through those scenarios and see if they would run. Now, we could either build the characters and just run them on stream ourselves or invite you guys to the Discord and have that work out to where we could actually like test you guys through that. because yeah, that would be really, really fun, is to actually have you guys participate in that and then have some sort of a prize for the beginner. Or the beginner. What is wrong with me today? Jesus, this stream and the last stream, I had just the wrong words for everything. So whoever's the winner would have like a prize or something. And then that idea spawned into you almost had an idea for like a free-for-all. So you went from that idea of, okay, well, what if they built these characters for like a free-for-all or like some sort of like, kind of almost like a battle royale combat.
Yes. But then I think you and I started taking it the direction where instead of just a straight up like free for all, but almost make it like tournament style brackets where you could like face off against each other, you know, and or even instead of just doing faced off like direct PvP combat, we could do challenges where you're trying to like accomplish a mission or trying to do something, or you know, like different aspects, or maybe put both of you guys up, see who can kill an owlbear faster or something like that, you know.
And this is where I think the idea even spawned even further, because what I love about having these multiple challenges, is we could do a multiple like tournament style series with this, to where, you know, you start with a draft or some way to have everyone create characters. Then what we do is we put you guys through like week 1, right? Week 1, you have time to figure out, you know, your characters and kind of learn about them, and then you guys on the stream, we will run them through some sort of like, you know, test. And then anybody, you know, who passes the first week, we'll move on to week 2, and then those who didn't pass, maybe they'll get a second chance, and we'll run like, you know, simultaneously like two of these tournaments. But each week would be a different, or each stream would be a different like challenge. And we were talking about some of these challenges being like, so maybe you have to like, first week you're alone. Maybe a different challenge is we would tell you guys, hey, pair up. You guys decide who gets to pair up, but by the next stream, you have to have a partner. And then you would be faced with a challenge that you two have to solve. But it's really also yes, it's winner takes all, but it's also survivor takes all. So even if there is a group, even though there'd be a group, the group wouldn't necessarily have to be the full survivor, just either person.
So I have a weird other idea to add to this that I think could be cool, and it could be like a solo challenge, or it could be like a bunch of people doing these solo challenges, and it's like, see who can do that solo challenge better, whatever the case may be. But you start off the series where you get to create literally whatever character you want. But then every week after that, you have to create, you know, characters based upon certain criterias and certain challenges, and they have to like meet certain goals, and you have to accomplish certain things with these certain restrictions throughout, and you kind of have to like learn creative ways to accomplish things based upon the restrictions. And I would love to see the transition to, okay, you can create whatever you want in week 1, and now you have all these restrictions, and now you have to find these creative ways to do things. But then in the very last week, and like the final challenge, you get to go back to being able to create whatever you want, but now with the new knowledge of all the different creative ways you can use things. So now you can combine all that creativity in a brand new character to kind of help you to overcome whatever that final challenge is, like something to that effect, you know.
I also like the idea of this like limitation challenge, because giving someone a like full-fledged make any level 10 character, you know, within certain limitations, obviously, because the problem that I have with D&D, and this is kind of a hot take, but one of the problems that I have with the current the problem that I have with the current state of D&D is that, as much as I love creativity, and as much as I love combining as much of what D&D has created, there is almost a problem and an imbalance in the min-maxing process now, to where the combinations and sheer convoluted character builds that can be done at this point, as fascinating and as great as they sound when you describe them and when they're on paper, they end up being more complicated and less fun. It's like I do know what you mean. It's like how I used to describe some old animes. Like, one of my favorite animes to equate this to was, I think it was Gundam Wing, and it was like one of my favorite animes as a kid. But going back to watch it, I realized that the anime itself wasn't that great. Like, I'm not saying the art style was bad.
Right.
But in general, you rewatch it and I'm like, nothing really happens in that show. Like, even the dope ass like Gundam fights were just like snippets of moments that were cool. But in reality, these weren't DBZ level fights. These were like 3-4 punches and a cool superpower, and the fight was over. Like, it was pretty dull and very lackluster. But I realized
there was a movie I watched recently that made me feel exactly that way.
And it made me realize in my disappointment that it wasn't a situation where I misremembered how awesome the show was. It wasn't like, oh, I thought there was so many more scenes. I go back and realize, like, man, this show really didn't have anything to it. But what it did have was potential, and I don't mean potential as in it could have been better, as in it opened up a storyline to where you kind of like in D&D got to fill in the gaps. And I think that's why I liked that show so much more, is because they alluded to all of these cool things the Gundams could do and would do and all of this stuff. And it would give you snippets of it, but they wouldn't go like DBZ and go all out with the superpowers. So it kind of left you there to think of other things that could be done in other scenarios and what you would do in the Gundam.
Am I the only person who creates side episodes for random things that I'm watching?
I don't think so. I think a lot of people fill in like what's been going on.
Because like I'll just be out and about and I'll be thinking about like a show that I'm really into, and I'll be like creating a side episode, like something that happened in between two other episodes.
I do it all the time.
An interaction. Like, that's okay. Just so I'm not I
do that a lot to make like inconsistencies in shows make sense. Like, because again, I'm a DM who's constantly in my realm, constantly filling in gaps and putting puzzles together. So yes, when I'm watching TV shows, if there's like a plot hole that is obviously going to be forgotten about, or like a loose end, I always try to, like, based on things that are said or things that are alluded to, I try to make my own little, like, okay, this is probably what I'm going to imagine this is what happened. I'm going to imagine that this is who they talk to.
Exactly.
You know, and then sometimes, you know, you have to go back and you have to retcon all of that. Because they finally circle back and you're like, you know what?
Wow, now you tell me.
Yeah, like,
I feel like this is the whole, what's the anime? Full Metal Alchemist. I feel like it's the whole thing that happened with them. They got ran away with it before the manga came out, and then
oh yeah, and then they had to go back and be like,
do all the Brotherhood changes. Whatever, it's fun.
I think this is going to be fun. I think having some sort of audience interaction is going to be a lot more fun. How we're going to do this and how we're going to set it up is going to be is still up for discussion, because I want to figure out how to do channel points better, because I know that we have the base channel points.
That was the other thing.
I'm going to want to break that into it.
Give your feedback. Betting.
Yes. So
we should
what
totally...
we got to watch this. There's a fine line on here when it comes to gambling. Like, there's a fine line.
That is fair.
Because gambling Twitches, like, I mean, we're not talking about showing gambling stuff, guys. But the idea is that I want to create a level of channel points. One that's kind of like for, you know, raffles, giveaways,
yes,
and voting and polls. I want to create something where it's not just the normal channel points that you guys get for just watching. It's going to be things where everyone's going to get like a higher tier channel point. I don't know what I'm going to call them yet. They might just be DM points. They might be, you know,
I like that.
I might call them high points.
Ooh.
Because of high point, so they might just be called high points.
That's classy.
I'm not really sure. Like,
that's classy.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm really curious if, you know, you guys, you know, make any comments about that. But yeah, I want to create that higher tier point where everybody will always be able to earn it, but obviously subscribers will earn them faster, and then there'll be, you know, like bits and all of that stuff. I'm gonna figure out all of that as we grow, because there's no point in getting ahead of ourselves. You know,
fair.
I'm not that big headed to think that I need to have all of that now. We'll grow it with the community, but the idea would be things like polls, voting, somewhat like betting, to where I do know that a couple other streamers that I like to watch, like I know Insum once in a while will do things where he'll allow his chat to do bets, and it's, again, doesn't earn them anything. It's all for fun, and that's what we would do. It wouldn't be any kind of real gambling, because we don't want to get into that. But yeah, it would just be kind of fun stuff, to where I'm even thinking, like, if we start to play live on stream, if we start to like do our sessions live, I think it would be great for these like higher level channel points, like the high points or the DM points, for chat to be able to use those to affect the game. So let's say like someone like a character that y'all really really like does like a really bad roll and is gonna like kind of get fucked up for it. Like maybe they rolled a 1 and it's not the time to roll a 1. I might like look over to chat and like let chat know like, hey, if I get X number of points, if all of chat spends like 50 points, I'll let them re-roll it. And things like that. Or, if something cool is going to happen, maybe I'll let chat try to like, if like, let's say a player has a really good idea and they're like, okay, can I do this? And I'm like, okay, well, if you want to do that, maybe I'll let chat to give them like a advantage or disadvantage. So I really want to be able to have a lot more interaction with chat, because it's not just, I don't want to just pull ideas from chat. I want you guys to tell me what you're thinking, because again, the whole, like Kage said earlier, the whole point of this is to get you guys thinking beyond the book. He put it beautifully before when we were chatting before the stream, that what I'm trying to do here is create that safe haven and that open door policy for everybody to come into a safe place to basically feel like you aren't in an area that you have an expectation put upon you when it comes to playing D&D. Whether you're a brand new player or a veteran player, whether you're someone who's been DMing and wants to be a player because you've only ever DM'd, vice versa, if you're a player and wants to DM, if you're not sure that you're ready to DM, or if you're just getting sick and tired of watching every other person out there talking about D&D being too strict on their version. That's kind of what we're here for. Yes, I'm going to talk about what I like. I'm going to talk about my opinions, and I'm going to say why I do and don't like them. But it's, not going to be, it's never meant to be in a way that it's like, hey, this is how you need to play D&D. This is what you should be doing. And if you're not playing correctly. Because to me, that's like the worst. Like, saying you're playing D&D incorrectly means to me you know nothing about D&D.
100%.
Because, I mean, like, again,
honestly,
taking it from someone who's playing...
disagree about a lot of different stuff, and yet I very much appreciate the way you go about stuff, and you've seen some of the stuff that me and my players will do, and...
Yeah, and I would never have done any... Like, there are so many things that I wouldn't do, but I still enjoy playing in your realm. You still enjoy playing in mine. Whether we disagree, that's kind of the fun of it, though. Like, you give me challenges of making sure that either A, I have my explanation, because that's a very big deal for me. I always have an explanation, so I'm always happy to give it, but it also makes sure that things are balanced, because I can only balance it so much, right? Now, I may be very, very specific on a reason why I have rules, but if someone can bring an idea to me that I haven't, an angle that I haven't come at it before, I'm willing to hear it out. It's just that question of... Is it just because, and this is always where we butt heads, is the question always comes down to, is it just because you don't like it? Or is it because you honestly don't understand and it doesn't make sense and you think it's actually, like, unfair? And I never take that as offensive, like when he says I think it's unfair. It's not unfair as he's not accusing me of, I think you're intentionally doing this as a bad DM. It's unfair as in he doesn't see the balancing, and I'm fine with that. You don't have to agree with my balancing. But he at least always concedes, okay, I don't agree with that, but I understand. I understand
that's where your reasoning lies, which makes sense, and I feel like there is a good balance of, basically, we're here to play with each other, right? Not against each other. Like another one of the things we were talking about before we started is that this is very much a collaborative game. The DM is just as much a player in this game as all the players are.
Oh my
right?
God, I know.
And we are there to
I can't tell you how many DMs that I've played with that they really just don't understand themselves, that they are equally a player, but you're not just that. This is why I prefer DM, like 100%. This is why you never hear me say GM. I actually don't like the term GM. Now, the reason I say that, and there's a little bit of a slash here, a little bit of a,
comma, asterisk,
all of that stuff, right? I like GM in the context of a tabletop game where you have a game controller, where you have someone controlling the game. Game master is fine. There's nothing wrong with being a game master in a tabletop game of any sort. And in the right context, I would use GM in that sense. When it comes to D&D, and D&D, I'm not saying that it has to be archaic. I'm not saying it has to have dungeons. It can be high fantasy. It can be tech. When I prefer the term DM over GM because for me, at least in D&D, when in my level of D&D and the way I look at playing D&D, DM is more of a appropriate label for someone who has a role in the game. Whereas, in my opinion, if you're playing D&D and you're acting more as the game master, to me, and again, this is all just words. I know that this has nothing to really do with anything, so don't roast me that hard. But for me personally, when I hear, it's like I don't think of myself as the game master because that tells me it's my job to run the game.
Almost like you're separating yourself from, you're no longer a part of it.
Yeah, I'm just there to
facilitate.
Yeah, like flip the pages and turn the cards over and push the story. Like, I don't feel that gives enough credence. And again, that doesn't make any sense because it's contradictory to the fact if you go to a different game and I don't see it that way. And again, it's more of that stubbornness of when I'm very particular to my D&D terms, so I like Dungeon Master, but it's also because it's again, that term comes from D&D from the most part, and it's that whole concept of you have a role to play, and it is not to control everything. Your role is to facilitate the scene and the environment and then play with the players. You're not just sitting there describing the scenes and you were there to play. You were there to be those NPCs. And this is part of the reason why I am not a fan of pre-generated conversations. Like going out of your way to not only pre-gen the entire campaign, but to pre-gen what NPCs will be ran into when and what they're going to say and their responses. Because as nice as that is, as much as it does help with organization and as much as it helps with a nice storyline, and if that's what you're going for in your campaign, great. I do not like using it because it doesn't allow me to play. If I have an NPC that you're going to talk to and I already know what he's going to say, I am not playing that game. Unless you do something that, is out of the scene, like you're going to attack and kill the king. Mm-hmm. But the point is if I'm not there working that NPC as if you just walked in and completed the quest and he just walked out of, bad news and now you're here with good news, like that, I need that. I need the idea of, okay, where's this king? What's he been doing? Cool. Okay, he's in a bad mood. He's in a good mood today. Or I'll just do the rolls. Like if I don't need to do all of that pre-gen, if it's more like, okay, cool, where is he at right now? It's this time of day, so let me do a roll. Okay, he's in a bad mood. That stuff is more fun because then when you come to him, I get to be that character. I get to feel those emotions, just like you guys are. You're walking into the king, about to give him some bad news. You don't know how he's going to react. I prefer not knowing how he's going to react, right? Like, I don't like the idea of being like, okay, if they have good news, I'm going to do this. Oh, no, they failed that last mission. All right, I got this script right. It's like, what am I doing? I'm organizing your game. And I see why some DMs get frustrated with that, or why their game... I see why some DMs get really frustrated when players don't... Like, they fuck up my game, and it's like they completely undid it. It's like, well, to be fair... It's kind of your fault for putting so much effort into something that can be walked around. I'm sorry, but it's like if you build a trap, but then have an obvious path around said trap, don't be mad when people walk around the path, right? And I'm not saying that it's obvious when, players mess up the DM's plans. It's not always obvious that that's what the plan is, but this is why it's like, if you're being upset that the players are doing that, my question is, are you playing the game? Because if you are playing the game, that should be just as exciting as the character. Because you're telling me that you want your players to come up with ideas, come up with plans.
I do think
and you're going to thwart them.
That's a big difference. Like that, a lot of mindsets when people are approaching the game. And again, this is another thing that you and I talked about before we started. Is like it's knowing the type of people that you're playing with and knowing why they're there, right?
Yes.
Because so often like people enter in there. It's like, hey, I have a story that I want to tell. I want you guys to be characters in my story, right? That's a very different vibe than saying, hey, I want to go explore a world.
Right.
right? Those are two very different games that is very going to be very hard to be run by the same person unless that person is very diverse in their skill sets like that. So it's like you want to make sure that the people that you're going to be interacting with, like, they want to do the thing that you want to do. Like, if you want like a Bandersnatch style adventure where you just pick this or that and see what's behind the other door, then like, all right, go for it. You want like module type, like this is what is going to happen behind every door. But if you want to explore, if you want to like see what your creativity can bring to the table, then you're likely going to want something that's going to give you a little bit more freedom, something that's a little bit less planned, that gives you some wiggle room to think creatively, to go outside the box and just be whatever it is that your character wants to be. And
well, and you touched on it too, which is a good point to the concept behind, you know, having all of that pre-gen and being mad or being upset when all of that hard work goes out the window. I think a lot of that has to do with, again, you touched on it when it comes to like everyone being on the same page. I think that comes from a lot of DMs who have expectations of their players that they're not open with. Like, if you've created this whole campaign and you had like this dialogue session or you had this big old fight, because, you know, you see this, the trope of like the DMs who they did this whole fight and, you know, it's like, oh, they one-shotted, you know, my BBEG, or they did all this. It's like, well, I mean, first off, that's kind of your fault because you've seen their progress, you know what they do, and I'm sorry, balancing is hard. So yes, they're gonna one-shot some of your biggest, baddest guys. Just be better next time. And yes, it sucks, but at the end of the day, if you've set up a trap or an elaborate puzzle or a fight, if you've set up anything that took you a long time, and you should be proud of it. I'm never going to say don't be proud of that hard work. I mean, sometimes I come up with things on the spot, and sometimes I spend days and hours on end trying to like fine-tune exactly what their experience is going to be for a certain like cutscene or for a certain dialogue. Like, I really try to make sure I have all of everything ordered, because there can be a lot of really good things I want to make sure are right. But the idea that can be thwarted or your characters can ruin it, I think comes from a mindset of, I've done this and I have it planned how it should be done. And so now you have a subconscious expectation of your players to do said thing. Because you see this in players too. You see players have expectations of how the game should be played, or how leveling up should work, or how a certain thing should play out. Because you get those you see this mostly in overzealous players who they haven't. That's something we haven't actually talked about. This is actually a good topic for at some point. But for DMs and players, learning, again, being on the same page. Some DMs want to be more in control of the scenery and the narration, whereas some DMs are very much open to everybody gets to be the narrator. And I have learned over the years where my comfort level is with this, because I love hearing good gaming groups when the players really, really get like into it. But I've learned over the years that a lot of players are really, really shitty at it. And it's not for a lack of trying, and it's not for a lack of creativity. It's not even a lack of what they said or did was bad. It's that the bad ones are always the ones that don't fit. Like, the good ones, unfortunately, are typically from the higher production people, and that's because they're usually actors, and I'm not saying that they're all on scripts, but they're usually people who know how to stay in a character.
It's that intuitive nature that you're connecting and playing off of.
And they're very situationally aware. They understand their role, and that is something that not a lot of people have. But I've seen that in a lot of gaming groups when players are given too much authority or too much... what's the word I'm looking for? When they're given too much ability to control the narration, you either have the ones that just troll it, or you have ones that just aren't in sync with like the DM style.
Yeah.
So you get, and I call them, you know, like the ones that are overzealous, because they're the ones who explain all of these things, and then it's like the DM has to be like, let's retcon some of that because that didn't quite make sense for what I like. It happened to me in one of my gaming groups one of my gaming sessions not too long ago. It was a session where one of my gamers who has a solo game with me met up with my wife's character, Vixie's character, and the whole thing was he had been following her for a while, and I was setting up the situation where he was still like, he had seen them like kind of stop and set up camp. And so I was trying to set up this situation where he wanted to approach them, and he was like, oh, okay, I have a thing for this. And I was like, okay, go ahead. And his explanation was fantastic. I loved what he had done. It was very creative, and it was very narrated very, very well. But it really didn't fit at all with what had happened up until that point. Like it kind of, if you were watching a movie, it would have been a very bad cut of, wait, you were over here doing this, and now suddenly you want to be in the trees and then
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's like, that's not really what we were setting up. And it's like, again, it's not like that's anyone's problem. It's just not being in sync with the gaming group.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always struggled with, because it's not that I've tried not to be stubborn with how I want my game to sound and how I want it to go. But as a lot of DMs out there can understand, we have to keep the organization. We have to keep everything going. And whether or not you have it written down, or you're like me where it's all mostly in your head, or you have some bullet points written down and you're kind of like dynamically doing it, when you have people throwing, not even monkey wrenches, like it's one thing to have them adding to that picture, but
yeah,
when you have to
there's for sure
also babysit it, right? When you have to go in and work on
tweak it,
it makes it just that much harder to keep focus, because you're trying to eliminate details that have now been thrown into the ring that don't belong.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with this. Like I have no good example or no good like
solution,
rule of thumb.
Yeah.
I think it's just more of a, I think DMs need to be comfortable stating their expectations or their preferences. But at the same time, I think players should also be willing to be like, hey, that's cool. Like, we're fine with that. But like, I don't just want to be narrated to. Like, I think it should be okay for DM to be like, hey guys, look, so I am a little bit particular, and it's not that I don't want you guys to embellish, but like, bear with me if I need to change some things, or maybe just if you want to embellish, you know, just work with me. It's fine for a DM to let people know. Like, if you're just gonna be like, no, I don't want you to embellish, just like tell me what you do, and I'm gonna like, that's fine if your whole gaming group is like that, but don't force that just because you want to be the one that says no. I will say, like, you let me know you want to attack, and I will tell you how that works out. It's like, that's a little aggressive. I don't necessarily agree with that, but again, if everyone's cool with it, that's everyone's cool with it. But but at the same time, my point stands. You as a DM should be fine saying that, if that is what you are. If you were the DM that says, look, I am skilled, I know what I'm doing, I like how my narration works, and that's what I'm doing, so please, you let me know the action you intend, and you can let me know what the outcome you want is, but let me do the narration. Please don't take the narration from me, either in combat or in dialogue. That's fine. What I'm advocating for is every DM should have the confidence and be able to say that, because you are a player, but unless you're the kind of the group that everyone's involved with everything, like all players are involved with every stage, this is where I think the confusion of those overpower hungry DMs come in, is because yes, you are a player just as everyone else equally. But here's that asterisk, parenthesis, it is your game. It is not your game to control and to decide everything about, but it is your story, it's your campaign. You are the one to keep it on track, you are the one to pace it.
I would say it's your game in the same sense that the character belongs to the player, right? It's your game, it's their character, right? So it's your responsibility to know what's on your character sheet. It's your responsibility to know what your character is going to do. It's your responsibility to know where this NPC is. It's your responsibility to know what's in this shop.
Exactly.
So that, in that sense, it's very much your game.
Right.
And
so it's fine to, and again, it's your game also in the sense that you are in control. You are the dungeon master. You're the one setting the pace, setting all of this. So if part of that is, I need to be in control of the narration, that's okay. You should be okay to say that. I'm saying I don't agree with you, and I'm saying that's a little aggressive. But what I'm saying is you should be fine, and you should say that to your players. If you're the type of DM that says, hey, I'm new, I don't really know how to embellish a lot, so please, like, just whatever you want to do it, that's fine. I also think that DMs should be able to tell players, like, hey, man, like that's you should be able to call them out and be like, that's not really, like, because, again, it also depends on the type of DM you are. If you are a... feels like sandpaper when I say it. If you're a flavor text DM, which means you don't care if your paladin in full plate armor, battle axe, and shield goes, well, I'm going to do a backflip, somersault, slide on my shield, hop up, grab my shield, and bash him in the face with it before my attack because I get a bonus action and I have good dex. And you're like, yeah, cool, whatever, do your swings because you don't care your flavor text DM. All that doesn't matter because all that he wants to do is hit the guy with his shield, because if you're the DM that says, oh, well, it's flavor text, so what you're saying is you want to close distance, bash him with your shield as a bonus action, and attack. Fine, that's the kind of DM you can be, but be honest about that and let them embellish it. Like, that's the whole point, right? You as the DM should be able to be like, hey, man, I don't care, just, like, let it out, man, like, have fun with it. That's cool. And players also, if you are a player who wants to embellish, you should be able to ask about it. Like, talk to your DM about that. If your DM is taking too much control, or it's that whole thing of don't come in with the expectation, set the expectation.
Yes.
Like there's so many people who
communication's key. Like,
there's so many gaming groups that you walk into, and like I can't count how many times I've had gaming groups walk in, and I will let everybody know I will be at any part of your character creation process. When you come into my realm, I will be a part of any part of it you want me to be. I will be just there to give you some pointers and just to give you some overlay of the world, just for enough for you to build your character with, or I will sit down and every step of the way answer every question you have. That's the kind of DM I am. And I'm always about, like, when new people come into my realm, I always let them know I do things a little bit different. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll maybe make some notes, but I'm always, like, very open, right? And I had some players not a while back on one of my Discord servers. Like normal, a couple players, they hit me up and they were like, hey, I just have a couple questions. But I had, like, a whole, like, instruction list. I had one player who just was like, I'm brand new. I would love you to I have so many questions. I'm like, cool, let's do that. And then I had two other players who just were like, no, we played D&D before. We got this. I'm like, okay, just make sure you run over the rules. Totally cool. Like, you've done this before. There might just be some tweaks, because I do some custom stuff with my realm. And they're like, yeah, we're fine. And I'm like, no questions at all. Like, you're 100%. Like, yeah. It was like 3 gaming sessions in, they found out that they're, like, missing feats. And they don't understand, like, why everyone else has, like, way more health than them. And it's like, they literally created, not bad characters, but it was like...
They created it based on what their expectations were, not realizing that your setup is not just cookie cutter.
Exactly. And I did try very hard to make that apparent, but it was just something that they didn't want to hear. Like, they just weren't bothered with. And I've seen this in gaming groups where some people come in, and yeah, some people are expecting the straight... I mean, a lot of people, I think, expect... At least when you see it on like, online, a lot of people just expect not only like the straight linear, but I feel like right now the most popular style of D&D is the linear roleplay campaign, is what I'd call it. So it's not necessarily a pre-generated module, but it is and not necessarily a one-shot. It's not always a one-shot. One-shots are becoming way more popular, and I think I've talked about this before. I just can't do one-shots. I don't get into the character. I invest. I get too invested into a character to just play it for 5 hours and that's it. But I think the linear roleplay campaign, what I mean by that is, like, what I see mostly is it seems like you have a very good DM with a thought-out story, at least a starting point and a rough end point. And you have... A linear progression throughout the story. It's not like very open world like ours, where it's more of a, you have set goals and you're grinding through them. They're not just like, on a checklist. Obviously, they pop up and they're very part of the story. But the idea is, like, it's very obvious that the party is playing a role,
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. The role playing is not just how they play their characters, but it's very much the party understands we are adventurers in this world. We have a role to play in this story, and we all agree to play it. And that is a beautiful, very old school way to play D&D.
I actually think that's a big example of what a lot of the bigger streamers, like you see, like Critical Role and like those, like people who play games like that, like those people, they are all leaning into a role in and it's not like, oh, like they're truly like doing what I enjoy, which is like letting the character lead and build, and like it evolves itself, but the character, like the person that they are, it is a role in a story that they are leaning into, and it's not like they're trying to guide it with their own agenda or do something specific with it. They're just saying, hey, let's just see where it takes us. Let's allow this role to occur. Let's see this story through.
Right.
Like,
and I love it. It's a beautiful form of D&D. I think there's nothing wrong with it. The reason I don't play more focused on that is I like the open worldness. I like again, being a player in my own realm. Again, being a DM is being a player. Just like when I was a player and I never knew what my DM was going to throw at me next, I don't know what my players are going to... I don't ever get mad at my players because that's my game. I'm the one controlling the world, but you guys are the one... It's like I'm the computer auto-generating the dungeon, but you're deciding what tunnel to take, and I have to generate it. Like, that's my part of the game, and I love that. I love knowing what's behind door 1 and 2 perfectly, but y'all fucking had to choose door number 3, and I hadn't figured that out yet. But guess what? We're gonna figure it out together.
I'm just gonna teleport behind door number 3. It'll be fine.
And that's the beauty of it, right? But that linear role play where everyone is understanding what they have to do. It's not that that's a problem. And it's not like there's anything, like, I've played that before, and it's not like it really, hurts anything. It's like, I don't necessarily sit there and be like, man, I have to play the healer now. I have to be... No, there's nothing wrong with that. It actually makes for very, very good gameplay because everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing, right? I'm not saying that my gameplay with this open world and letting everyone truly be a very unique individual character on their own that is separate from any party they play with. I'm not saying that is the better way to play it. That is my preferred way to play it, just because I like the personal, not just the personal interactions, but I like the personal investments.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the roleplay side, and I like roleplay. I love when my character, my players roleplay, but that linear-based roleplay makes for a very comfortable zone for people to get into. If you're going to accept your role as the paladin, you can lean, like you said, those actors lean into it because there is a solid role. I am here to be the good guy, to spout off some religious crap once in a while, to bash some evil heads in, and, to heal once in a while. Like, that your role is to protect these people. You aren't going to leave. And, like, in my realm, you could just be called off, or you could be like, yeah, my God says I gotta go. Like, you could do anything like that in my realm. But there's a comfort knowing that party is not going to split up. There's a comfort in those levels of games where the rogue is not at all going to steal from anyone in the party outside of maybe a joke. You know that, if in those situations you have for story purposes, because most of these gaming groups wouldn't allow for an evil character unless it's specifically for the story. But if you have an evil character that you don't have to worry. Like, there would be no question about them being evil within the party.
Yeah.
It's a story. I don't want to use flavor text in this because it's more than that.
Oh, very much
so.
But
it is a story enhancer. It has nothing to do with what they're going to do with that character. Like, they're not truthfully going to backstab all of the characters. But they may let all the characters get arrested.
But it does communicate a lot about, like, the way it goes about, like, you can trust, hey, my character's not going to die, or they're not going to get their backstabbed.
It's a meta game comfort.
Yeah.
There's a meta understanding. So this is where metagaming is a balancing act. Because in a game like that, the meta concept is that nothing really is going to go out of what we expect. Like, yes, the evil guy may turn us in, and we may go to prison, but he's not literally going to be the one that kills us. Like, he's not going to kill us in our sleep, but he may turn us in. But guess what? He may turn us in to get buddy with this person. But I do like the fact that
there is still a threat of death.
Yeah, because you could go to jail and get hung. But the idea is that it's within a comfort zone of the story.
Yes,
And you
very
know
much
that it's
so.
not going to get out of hand. So again, it's beautiful. I love it. It makes for amazing narrative gameplay. It makes for amazing watchable gameplay. But my feeling about that is that when you have too much of that comfort zone, it's more about, and again, it's not even being about a joke character. It's more about, you start to focus more about how to play that role than allowing the character to play themselves. And that's where I draw the line.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. I don't mind playing in those kind of games with those gaming groups. It's actually a lot of fun sometimes because you don't have to think that hard. You just have to play what the character is, right? I love creating a character, and sometimes it's just that simple. Like, I just have to just play those 4 bullet points. He's dumb, he's strong, and he's like there's just a few things that you can just be like, I'm going to play this, and I don't have to think, and it's fun. And you have a lot of fun. You get to goof off with everybody, and that's where a lot of like those role play, like shenanigans get to happen in games like that. And that's why I do like them. But I do feel, oh hey, Babacus, thank you for the follow.
Hey,
appreciate it. Thank
thanks,
you very
Babacus.
much.
Right on.
Welcome to the chat. But yeah, I think that it's when it comes to when you lean into playing that RP character, you stop thinking about what the character really wants. You stop thinking about what would really happen, and you do lean into, well, we know what's going to happen. The party, the team is going to stay together, and it's not bad, but that's where I would draw my line. My line is, I prefer, if you just have that instinct and you just know, man, my character with all these things, if I were in his shoes, this is what I would do. I want that level of gameplay. And that is hard for some people. Some people aren't interested in, having to honestly deal with the rogue in the party stole something of theirs of value. They don't want to deter from the campaign storyline to deal with that, right? They find that as not gameplay. I think, some players find that to be upsetting and be like, oh, this is more complicated. I don't want to have to, like, why'd you steal from me, man? Now I got to do this. Like, I just want to go get the bad guy. And it's like, but this is gaming. Like, again, it's that expectation. They come in with this expectation to play through this linear storyline, and that's fine if that's your expectation. But when you have those gaming groups that aren't communicating, they're not on the same page, and you have some people who are trying to do their own thing, and you have other people who are trying to play, walk the line, that's when you start to get those disruptions. And that's why I prefer having that more open world concept and not forcing that you have a role to play. Because if the gaming group wants that, like the Faction 5, is one of those. They do not play in a story-driven campaign. They do. This is the closest thing I have to a story-driven campaign, because I did set the whole group up for a lot of stuff. But you guys can break up at any point, but you won't, because of the characters that were made. Because the group decided we want a cohesive group, whereas most of those players have other characters in other gaming groups of mine or individual solo campaigns with me, but they decided in this time, we want to play this.
This is what we're doing here.
To go. And that's, I love that they did that. But I want that to be the player choice.
My character got the opportunity to drop in on that.
Oh yeah,
and even though that was not a part of his original plan, like that's his sandbox interacting with their pipeline or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's the kind of idea. If that was a story-driven campaign that they were, meticulously going on, I wouldn't have been able to drop Dobbed in there. That would have been too much of a, disruption for them.
Yeah.
But with the ability to have that open world to where they want to stay as a cohesive unit, but you can pop in and out and not really disrupt how that plot line's going, that's the beauty of it, right? And that's where I like that, because they can be influenced by you and let you come and go without then feeling like, oh, well, how did we just lose a player? Now we can't play because we had a character and now we're a character down. Like,
right.
That's how it goes. Like, I like that. I don't, again... well, because I don't know how long you've been here, but we've basically been talking about the main topic this last section is the expectations people come in with. So trying to get people to realize that if you're coming into a D&D game as a player or as a DM, you have to understand that you may be coming in with some expectations. And what we're trying to do is talk to people, give examples of why DMs and players need to be more communicative together, and understand that if the DM wants to take control of narration, for instance, if the DM's like, no, I like to narrate things, let me know what you would like to happen, but let me fill out the storyline. Whether you agree with it, the DM should be confident enough to be like, hey, this is how I like to play. And players at the same time should also be confident and be like, hey, I like to embellish a little bit, or, you know, I really want to like play out my character. And again, if you come in with the expectation that, oh, this is a story-driven campaign and we're, you know, going to go from point A to point Z and we're going to hit every letter in between, if that's your expectation and then all of a sudden someone in the party goes, oh, hey guys, let's go over here and let's go look at this dungeon, and you're like, but the BBEG, he's in the next town over, like we're about to do like the last fight, and they're like, no, forget him, we can get him, let's go do this other thing. It's like, some people really don't like that, but that's not a problem with anything other than no one set the boundaries in the beginning. And that's kind of what the current topic is just trying to talk about, again, expectations that you come in with.
So Bobicus says he's currently in a gaming group, and his group is just phenomenal for him. Like, everything from like the brutal combat all the way to the shopping is a good time. And I really feel like that comes down to fantastic synergy. Right? Just like I love like character synergy, like table synergy, and I don't know if these are like people you've played with for like a really long time, or people you've known for a really long time, or just somehow you just find the magic group. Like, over COVID, I played so many like online games just because I was stuck inside and I needed something to freaking do. So I tried to find, and there were a couple of games that I found with some like really good people. Like, it was awesome. Like, you can find some crazy good people sometimes. But
how many Bobicus, how many people are in your gaming group aside from your DM? Like, how many like is in the party that you game with? Because he says that there's some of them are new and that there is magic, but I'm really curious how big that gaming session is, because that can also change it too, right?
Like sometimes when it's more intimate, it's
6
easier.
plus the DM, and
that's impressive.
So is your I'm assuming that your DM's like, he's got to be not like a veteran DM, but he's got to have been like, that's 6 people.
Have you guys all been? Is this all your first group, or have you all, or have some of you guys have more experience than others?
Man, 6 people. Like, I remember my first the game with 6 players. That is not easy.
I told you when I first started DMing, I just had a bunch of kids ask me to play, and so it started off with only like 4 of them, but then it grew to like 7, 8 players, and I was like, all right, I don't 100% know how to do all of this, but you know, you make do with what you got. But
right,
you know, listen, that's impressive. Like,
that's crazy,
especially because in a group that becomes larger, like when you start having like 6+ people, like there's a lot of different personalities that like mix, and you know, sometimes, you know,
well, and that's where I think once a DM has more than 3 players, so 4 in the total thing, that's when generally I start to see the expectation issues. Because usually a DM with 1 or 2 players, like the first 2 are probably people who have helped him or have been around for a while, maybe 1 or 2 other newer players. But, you know, once he gets the 4th, 5th player on board, that's where you're most likely going to run into somebody who's like not quite jiving with the rest of the group. So I gotta say, I'm very impressed with a 6 party that runs that smoothly. And yeah, sometimes, like, I've had gaming groups. Okay, so for instance, you know, I have like my 2 biggest gaming groups I would say that I currently run are the Faction 5 and the Old Gods really isn't a big gaming group, but the more consistent ones that I did were the Faction 5 and Old Gods. Faction 5 was bigger. There was 5 of you guys, obviously. And in the Old Gods, there was only, you know, you and Vixie. So, yeah, it's so funny, though, because out of all of the other gaming groups that we've done solo games with you, I've done solo games with Vixie, I've done, you know, Vixie was in another 3-person group before. You've hopped around to multiple of the gaming groups, so you've seen all of them. And it is funny, though, the Faction 5 and Old Gods, though, there is something synergistic that just happens in those gaming groups. Like, the storyline just flows. Everybody just, like, even with your main character, when it's just us 2, Dovd can be difficult for both of us sometimes. But we go to the Old Gods.
Especially for me, which is weird.
But we go to the Old Gods where it's a Psionis, it's a 2-person, like, I run a 2-person thing where it's a Psionicist and a Bard, and it just runs so smooth. more than any other gaming session, and I don't know why.
Synergy, bro. It really is. So this is a beautiful comment that he's putting out here. So
she's brand new to DMing, but she's really good. I mean,
I really think the fact that all of you guys have DM'd a little bit
that's fantastic.
Gives such a beautiful perspective across the crew that allows you guys to bring so much. Because we were just talking about this. I don't know how long you've been here, but we were just talking about how much of a collaborative experience playing this game is. And it's not just the DM dictating what everybody else should do, but it's a lot more of like the entire table bringing, like you just said, magic to the table. Like everyone bringing their perspective. There's something new, something different that they get to like enjoy.
And what he's saying right here, like I'm loving that what he's saying right here. So the fact that she'll take the basic, like she'll just take suggestions, what's going on right then and there, and then they hash it out. That is something that I think we like to do. Is if there's, again, it's that one thing where you have an idea as a DM what you want to do, but you are a player and the world reacts to you and the players. And I love when DMs are willing to talk it through and talk with their players. What I'm not a fan of is, again, no one's really a fan of the railroading DM, but also the DM who thinks they know better just because they wrote the story.
Yeah.
Because, like think about the, not the audacity, but just the idea that I wrote the story so I know how it needs to be played out. It's like, but who's this story for then? That right there for anybody listening. If your DM is saying, if your DM is giving off this mindset that I know better because I wrote the story, especially if they say that flat out, like, well, I wrote it so I know better, I would just say the first question out of your mind out of your mouth should be, who's this for? Who did you write? If you know better, then who did you write the story for, you or me? Because if you wrote it for you, then hey man, cool, we're here for you. But if you wrote the story for me, and I'm telling you there's a problem with the story, don't tell me you know better, because the story's for me and I'm telling you that I want, like, it's like game makers making a game saying it's for their audience and then getting mad when their audience has feedback. It's like you have to understand where is your ego in this, because yes, as DMs we all have an ego, we're all stubborn, but at the same time, again, it's that concept of we are playing the game with other people, so there has to be a give and take on all sides, right? And yeah, he has more to say. Wow. So yeah, I love the idea of doing like the church thing. I've done that. Actually, that was one of your gaming sessions was one of my favorites when Doved the not the atheist, but just Doved the I don't want to give credit to anybody in any celestial who doesn't give really a shit about me, goes and walks into a random church and then I walked into a random church, actually got to meet the God, and then
you see, this is what I'm talking about.
I gotta catch up. I gotta catch up here.
They got thrown into a rancor pit, and they're like, "Hey, what do you guys want to fight?"
Unexpectedly threatened a bandit leader. Bandit leader pulled a lever to knock us into a pit and just said, "Hey, I wanted to give you a rancor pit fight." Which we came up with 2 stone golems. I think we're. Wow, dude, that is dope.
That's straight gold, man.
So this is great because so you want to talk about terminology. This right here is what I would call a true sandbox realm, right? Because like Lucifer likes to call his a sandbox. Mm-hmm. But I feel like sandbox is like when I go into a game, like a video game, and it's sandboxy, I expect the game to expect a lot more from me, right? Like I go into a sandbox game and I expect there not to be a story. I expect there not to be a lot for me to do. I expect I have to kind of create my own way. Whereas open world, like what I like to call mine, isn't so much of a sandbox where, you can test anything. It's no, you can do whatever the physics try. And I think that this, and again, in no way of like any kind of tier list, I just like to categorize things. So it's not like I would say open world is better than sandbox, but I think this is a perfect example of a quote-unquote sandbox realm, where it's hey, I wanted to do this. How can we make it ideal for your experience? And in the moment, you're working with it. And that is something I think that is fantastic, because for a bunch of people that are new, or at least that are new together, it just... everyone can be a part of it, and that's so great. I like that's one of the things I most appreciate about your universe, the Cineverse, is your players, because it's their interest in what they want to experience. Like, you let them know, like, where do you want to go? What scenery do you want? And then I'll paint it. That's what this sounds like.
Yeah.
And that's where I like that. Like, yours, I would almost call borderline sandboxy with that open world, because you really you're the painter of whatever they ask for.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, you're walking through the painting I've already made, and you just picking up the details.
Yes.
You're creating the painting
exactly.
as they're walking. And that's kind of, I think, the difference between open world and sandbox, right? Like,
I feel that.
like,
I can feel that.
Like, they're still discovering your world and what you have to offer, but you're doing it from the prism of their lead. Whereas in my realm, it's all here. You can do with it whatever you want, explore it, but it's already there. You know what I mean? Like, I will let you go anywhere, but what's going to be there is not dictated by you. You get to go wherever you want, but what's there is already there. Whereas in your world, not only do you get to go wherever you want, but as you get there, I paint it.
It like, see, I just like the mentality of, like, you're walking through something and it's getting, like, auto-generated around you, and, like, it's one of those discovering maps. It's pretty crazy.
Let's see. He says, I'm a spore druid. We have a barbarian and a ranger rogue, then 2 sorcerers, 1 celestial, 1 draconic, and a fighter cleric combo. Gotta love a fighter cleric.
Oh my gosh.
I've got 4 skeletons, and I keep them mostly for comedic effect. Okay, I need to know. You need to give me something about what you've done with them.
I've always wanted to play a spores druid. So I think druids at 5th level...
Okay, hold up.
I think druids at 5th level, they get... what is it? Raise Dead? What's the 5th level? Is it Animate Dead? It's something like that.
It's a spore druid?
Spore druid.
I'm not familiar with spore druid.
They got some cool subclass features. So, instead of, like, turning into their wild shape, turning into an animal...
Animate Dead at 5th level.
Animate Dead at 5th level. There you go. And what is it? A 3rd level spell, right?
Where is this from? I'm not finding it on Beyond. That's weird.
What is it?
Spore druid. I don't see spore druid on Beyond.
Oh, what thing does that come from? Let me check.
I'm really curious. I want to get, like...
Druid.
I want to get a little up to date on this, because that sounds fantastic.
Druid.
Where?
Oh, that's right. It doesn't tell me where they come from. I think it's from Tasha's Cauldron of... yes, there you go. Okay. Circle of Spores Druid.
Druid 101. Circle of Spores. Okay, I'm going to... This is fascinating. I just want to see, like, what we...
Anime did 5th level. Yep. Gosh, that is so crazy. What's the class feature? Let me see if I can look it up. I'll look it up while you read.
Rather than blasting enemies from afar with spells, supporting allies with buffs and healing magic, or transforming into beasts and foes in combat, this subclass allows you to pump your body full of magical spores and symbiotic entities to fortify you and improve your own melee damage output. So basically, this is like a druid monk.
Lightweight.
This is this is a druid. That is okay.
Okay, so Halo of Spores.
I could mess with this.
This is their special ability. Halo of Spores at 2nd level. You are surrounded by an invisible necrotic spores that are harmless until you unleash them on creatures nearby. When a creature you can see moves within the space within 10 feet of you, if it starts its turn there, you can use your reaction to deal a d4 of necrotic damage. Didn't they have an ability that replaced one of their wild shapes?
So I think
symbiotic entity. That's
Babacus, is this what you use? Your fungal infection feature allows you to raise beasts or humanoid corpses as zombies. Is that how you have skeletons? Is that how you have skeletons? Yeah. I'm reading these drawbacks of Circle of Spores, but one of them says your fungal infestation feature allows you to raise beasts or humanoid corpses as zombies. Despite the effect of this feature...
He gets that at 6th level. I know.
You gain the feature at 6th level. Wow.
I bet he just has like a chorus of like the mariachi band of skeletons just following him around. That would be
So wait a second.
hilarious.
So you get Animate Dead at 5th level. Am I reading it like... Is this like an alternative? Because you get Animate Dead at 5th level, but this is
a different class feature that's not a spell that you can just use.
Oh my... Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a...
Yep.
This is a necromantic druid monk?
Yep.
Is... Okay, hold on.
Babacus, you are a freaking G.
There's Eddie.
who's in a Harlequin costume and a Harlequin mask, Emperor in crimson robes,
Bro.
and golden mask who plays chess with my druid. Oh, okay. Hold on. These are the four skeletons. I wasn't reading this correctly. So these are the four skeletons. So there's Eddie, who's in a Harlequin costume and a Harlequin mask. Emperor in crimson robes and golden mask who plays chess with my druid. There's Mr. Bones who wears a sugar skull mask. Awesome. Dia de los Muertos dressed in a rebozo, Mexican shawl. And has roleplayed as one of the sorcerer's girlfriends. Okay, roleplayed as in, like, being able to be like, hey, this is my date for the night. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, because this mask, I get that. And Grim, who wears a Victorian morning dress and veil. Grim once shot down an albatross on a sea journey we went on. Oh my god, I love these four skeletons. This is fantastic. We keep getting interrupted.
Dang it, I need to know who wins this chess match. I feel like this is like a single game that's been going on and on forever. That just keeps getting interrupted. That's freaking
So
fantastic.
what is... I'm really curious, like, it has been so long since I've looked at Animate Dead. I don't know what you can all... What is it? It can't be concentration.
No. So Animate Dead, let me read it for you real quick. See, I love these freaking spell apps that I have for 5th edition. Alright. Animate Dead. So it is instantaneous, and it's creatures under your control for 24 hours, after which it stops obeying your commands you've given it. To maintain control of this creature for another 24 hours, you must cast this spell on the creature again before the current 24-hour period ends.
Okay, so it is, there is a re-up cost.
Yes, you still have to
Okay.
cast it again. So, like, if you have, like, 2 third-level spells, you can cast it once, and then cast it again, then you sleep, then you get your spells back, and then you can keep it up over and over and over again. And at higher levels, you can cast it on multiple skeletons, so you can keep up a little mini army with you over and over and over again every day if you use your Animate Dead consistently.
That is... Oh, man, that is crazy. This is a crazy build. That's so cool.
Bro, if you want to, like, do that and, like, multi-class into, like, a necromancy wizard and get some, like, crazy necrotic bro, you could go hard.
Of course,
You could go
again,
hard.
of course, because I have to just make it all make sense. Because, you know, it's like I will always use anything D&D has, but of course I have to make sure that it aligns with all of the physics of mine.
For sure.
So now I'm just like that. I'm just reeling on this like spore concept and just all of the things in my realm that could be done with it. Like that would be such a fun character. Like, oh man. Oh, this is why I want an audience. See, look, we've already already first day.
You are the true OG.
Baba Kiss, thank you so
need
much.
you to know this.
I don't think you were here in the very beginning, but what this stream actually is actually kind of, this is our 8th stream. So this is the 8th stream that we've done.
First one on Twitch though.
First one on Twitch. So mostly it's just me. Kage joins me every now and again. I was for the last 2 months on YouTube, and it was mainly just to generate content, because I'm hoping to eventually turn these like live streams, clip them down, and maybe do some like smaller YouTube content. But I realized that in the end, I'm just not going to get any sort of like live audience on YouTube until I have that content. So we thought about coming over to Twitch just to interact with people, because it also does bring up more topics than what we have planned.
And look what the Lord brought us.
Look at that. First time we're on
beautiful
here, we already
Bobicus.
had you interacting with us, so thank you so much. This was just fantastic. Let's see. We could get a Cloud Fog, Blindness, Deafness, Sleet Storm have been really useful spells in the campaign. Yeah. You know, I would love to do an episode. Like, I'd love to sit down and talk about what we think are some underutilized spells, because I do love those. Watching some of the other D&D YouTubers out there that I like. That is a topic I always like to listen to, and stuff like this, like Fog Cloud, is just, I never hear anyone use Fog Cloud.
See,
Like,
I'm writing this right now. Every time I use it, all the other players get mad at me because nobody else can see, nobody else can fight. Like,
but that's because I think people don't understand how to use it.
It's the timing. It's when it's useful, and I think people, if you can use it in the most creative ways, if you have settings for it, it can be crazy useful.
Right. Well, and again, too, I think a lot of this actually comes down to the campaign or the combat heavy DM style that became so popular with 4th edition. And what I mean by that is while 4th was kind of leading the way, and leading but I mean failing, they were really trying to spam out the whole every session should have 3 or 4 combats, right?
Yeah.
And it brought in this really weird mindset of not just min-maxing, but taking away the in-world practicality of things, right? So if you're primarily playing a campaign where you're mostly in combat and all you're really doing is shopping and talking to people outside, like you're getting your orders, you're asking questions and you're going shopping, but otherwise you're in combat.
Yeah.
There's so many spells that are not going to be useful. Like ventriloquism is going to be a completely useless ability in anything like that.
Yeah.
Because who's going to, it's just not going to work, right?
I mean, you're really not going to care about comprehend languages half the time unless you're like in a dungeon trying to read something.
Exactly. There's so many spells that I think people overlook because DMs aren't presenting options for it. And it's not even presenting options, it's also players not thinking through the scenario, right? Like, imagine if you're trying to like thwart some people and, again, on a political scale. Like, there are some, campaigns out there who get like really in, political intrigue, and you really get to talk to like, the nobles, see what people are doing, kind of influence them. I mean, being able to stop someone from telling someone a secret. Or imagine being able to like stop someone from like warning somebody by deafening them. Or muting them, right? It's like with silence. Like, there's so many situations that I don't think are properly set up to use those, right? Because when you're too focused on getting them into the next combat, people aren't thinking about the in-world, like, what's the word I'm looking for? The in-world implications of these spells in existence, right? Like, and again, this is also on DMs. This is also on DMs. Like, how many times have players done something where they're like, well, I'm going to go tell so-and-so, and it's like, well, why didn't you send someone out there to go cast a spell where they couldn't talk for, that time frame until you get interrupt them? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways that these spells could be useful, but no one's being presented with them. So, again, it's one of those things. Situational timing, but who's presenting the situations or who's getting the timing right?
Very much so. Very much so.
Let's see. So I pick fog. Okay, so wait. So I'm. Oh wow, I have a little bit of chat I have to catch up. So if you want to. Wow, where am I? Okay, there's the fog cloud phrase. Okay, so the phrase "a target you can see" is really popular in most spells. Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to shut down an enemy spellcaster, yeah, cutting off their sight to everybody would be absolutely fantastic. Another person on Twitch made a doodle of my guy and his skeletons. I can post it on. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thanks, Vixie. I appreciate you. Let's see. So another person on my Twitch made a doodle of my guy. Let's see.
That is
if you had to pick
epic.
The most underrated spell, Fog Cloud. Oh, that is dope.
That is
amazingly done. And no, that's exactly what I kind of pictured too.
Shout out to that streamer.
Dude, that is so dope. Like, how do I... Let me go ahead and pop over here real quick. I'm going to shut you off for a second.
Not a problem.
What? Oh.
Hey, look, I'm still there. See?
Let's see. Can I do that? No. That's not it. Main camera, there we go. Nope, that's not working either. That's unfortunate. I thought this one would show... Oh, it does show that. The problem is... It's showing the wrong camera. My bad, guys. I have not set this up for when I have guests to actually show the PC cam. I was going to pop this up on the screen, but I'm lacking the skills to do that right now. So I apologize for not being able to show this lovely artwork off. But it does look absolutely amazing, and... Yeah, man, this makes me jealous too of like when I've seen your kids do artwork for your game, and that's the one thing that I have not done.
That's gone.
Oh, because that was in the bag.
Yeah, dude.
Sorry, I brought that up.
It's all right.
But yeah, no, I severely lack artwork in my realm, and it's a shame. I love stuff like this because it does bring out so much more life into things. Yeah, That is so gorgeous. I just don't know why I can't show it on here. It only wants to show my...
The other screen?
Yeah, it shows the wrong screen, and I don't know why.
Oh, rude.
But I'll have to fix that another time. But that is so
next
cool.
time.
Oh well, thank you for sharing that. That is fantastic.
Drock Show? Is that how you say that?
He's the Drock Show. If you want to shout him out. Oh, okay.
The Drock Show. That's what's up.
All right, fantastic.
Shout out to you, the Drock Show.
Does he do artwork live? Like, is that what he does on his Twitch, or is he just like a D&D streamer? Because that would be cool if you could watch him do this stuff live. That would be awesome. Oh, the Drac Show. All right, yeah, go check him out. We'll probably have to follow him. Maybe we'll do like a raid or something.
Right.
Oh, actually, yeah, maybe we'll just raid him later. Because I think you have to actually start calling it, don't you?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
All right. So if he has to call it, I know we've kind of been on here. Oh yeah, we've been on here a decent amount of time. Yeah. So this was actually really just kind of a test. This was mainly just making sure that everything worked with the new Twitch stream and making sure that we are still available to pump that over to YouTube. So we're probably gonna call it here. Babakiss, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for interacting. We'd love to see you again. We don't have an official schedule. I do try to go live once a week, at least within every 10 days, trying to narrow it down to Sunday, Monday. But I'm not great at keeping schedules. I kind of like to just pop up when I have ideas. So we would love to have you back if you're free. They're usually in the evenings. Kage will be here every now and again.
Yeah, man, I love doing this. It's a great time.
And you can also catch me on YouTube.
Catch me outside.
So you can go to, what is my YouTube? It's how bad is it that I don't even know?
I should have those links.
I can't even advertise myself. That's how bad I am right now. So you can find me at MGS Live, just one word, MGS Misfit Gamers Studio. That stands for Misfit Gamers Studios, or at Misfit Gamers Studios Live. That is the full title. You can find me. All of my previous live streams are on there, and you will be able to go check that out if you'd like. We've had a couple different conversations. Here we go. So that is my YouTube information there. So if you're interested, go check out the other live streams. Leave any comments. I'll be using those comments to kind of gather more topics for our live streams. But yeah, we just, the whole thing about this stream, like I said before, is trying to get people to think beyond the book and not feel like they have to play D&D a certain way. So we just kind of talk about all manner of things. We're going to talk about some homebrew stuff, like we'll go on D&D Beyond, going to look at some homebrew, kind of give it our critique and what we would do with it.
Yep.
We'll just talk about mechanics, about each of our realms. And hopefully as we gather all of this audience, we will also be doing more audience participation, things where we can actually do some sort of gaming with the audience as well. So hopefully you'll be around for that. Hopefully you've enjoyed your time here, and we will see you next time. Like I said, hopefully usually Sundays and Mondays are usually my stream days. Once in a while I'll do it on Thursdays. So kind of keep that in mind if you're looking out for us. You have a great afternoon, evening, night, morning, wherever it is for you. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, we'll be back. Thank you, everybody. I think this was a success. We'll be here on Twitch from now on.
Yeah, man.
All right. And